we've got to talk about our movies for the week, and this is just something that we've watched recently, preferably something that we watched on disc that we have to talk about. Would either of you like to go first?
What have I watched?
Yeah, well, Evan's a loser who never consumes anything because he sucks. Now I recently watched once again both, I guess, Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally, which are both Rob Reiner movies.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget that Rob Reiner's like one of the best filmmakers ever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, This Is Spinal Tap is, like, amazing, and so is Princess Bride. And When Harry Met Sally's probably the best romantic comedy ever made. He had a streak there of, like, the most baller shit you could possibly make. And my girlfriend has a DVD copy of When Harry Met Sally, and I watched Princess Bride on Disney Plus. I guess DVD quality does... on a proper movie, it's never going to be like a god-awful rip or anything, but you do always kind of notice that 480p, which is why it's become impossible for me to, like, buy DVDs unless I absolutely have to. It's Blu-rays only, and soon to be 4K stuff once I get that 4K player in. And, once 4K becomes my standard, I don't have to worry about upgrading, because it will not matter for the rest of my life, probably, till the hologram movies come out on floppy or whatever.
I can only hope that the PS5 is actually good at playing those.
Yeah, I hope so.
What, the floppy holograms?
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's my the PS5 will be my intended player of both video games and movies, as the PS3 and PS4 were. And PS2, and when I listen to CDs on the PS1.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob Reiner, just simply the best. Stand By Me, Misery.
Stand By Me is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's like one of the first movies I saw as a kid that I was like, what? Like, oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's sad that he disappeared on that boat 30 years ago or whatever. But... He produced some really baller content when he was around, and I was happy to reminisce, because, like, The Princess Bride is, like, the most... Very few movies I would just call adorable, but that's The Princess Bride. It's so gentle and kind, and it's funny. Like, it's very funny, but it's just so, like, genuine about stuff, because it shows that you can be jokey and comedic in your content, but you can still tell the story like it means something and not be, like, ironic about it. That movie just still hits me really well. Both the incredible performance by one Andre the Giant.
Beat it, or I'll call the Brute Squad.
I'm on the Brute Squad.
You are the Brute Squad.
The super fun action stuff. The action's super cartoonish and strange sometimes. But that, like when both Wesley and Inigo Montoya swing on, like, a monkey bar and do a flip during their sword fight.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just extremely genuine, and it's also the case with When Harry Met Sally. Is that it's an incredibly genuine, earnest movie, and it's why it, like, works. Because it's funny, and it's very funny, but it doesn't. It never, like, takes away from, like, the core relationship. And the great thing about it is they're friends for, like, most of the movie, and so that you see them relate to each other as people. It's not just oh, I saw you and you're attractive and now we're in love, and then I piss you off and at the end of the movie, and then I make a grand gesture to make you feel better. It's, people meet each other, they have their differences, they become friends, and eventually they realize that, they have something more there. And I don't know, you don't see that often, and you don't see something as genuine and funny as Princess Bride anymore, really. I should have gotten that Criterion version of Princess Bride. That movie's great. I need a higher version of it.
Yeah, it's like a nice, like, storybook kind of case on it too. It's pretty good package. Well, Evan, do you have something, or do you want me to go first and you still need to fucking think about it?
No,
you have all week.
Well, see, I was preparing mostly just for the Justice League conversation, I completely forgot that part of this was just things that we've watched, but I have some. So I'll say I rewatched Monster House.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
Which is awesome. And
Yes.
I don't know why, but there's this like, at least what it seems like to me, there's this weird like stigma around it where it's like meme trash and just bad. Like, but it's just actually a really great movie. I think the reason for that is because of the animation is so like jarring and kind of like gross. It's not even like that it's bad. It's just like a different style that people are just not used to seeing, I think.
I think it's just there's a tendency for anything from the 2000s to be memes because Zoomers are just doing nostalgia.
Yeah, I think anything that played on Cartoon Network 40 times a day kind of ends up in the same category.
Which this did. Very much did.
Yes, it did.
I think a revelation that both Aaron and we both watched it, had it at the same time, was that we had never actually seen it like front to back before. We'd only ever seen parts of it on Cartoon Network, and just kind of, just different pieces here and there led us to believe that we'd seen the whole thing. But like, it's absolutely great. It's like, it's funny. It's legitimately has great comedy. The characters are really likable.
Amazing Douglas Pipe score.
Yeah,
yes.
The Douglas Pipe score just absolutely slaps.
The best.
He's just killing it. He's one of the best in the business. Trick or Treat, it has an amazing score, and Krampus, they both have great scores. So that's awesome. And it has a lot of really, it's like shot for horror. Like, it's actually made for horror. It's good children's horror. I feel like people don't give it credit for that, where they're just like, oh, it's a house, it has a mouth. I remember specifically when I was a kid, the scene where, I forget the old crotchety guy's name, but Steve Buscemi voices him, when his wife like falls into the foundation of the house and the cement goes over her, that shit stuck with me for so long. I thought that was just like horrifying. And the funny part was, when I rewatched it, I was expecting to get that same sort of like visceral reaction, but the fact of the matter is that they don't show any of it. She just falls, and then it's more of just the implication of that made me like scared as a kid. So it was amazing to see like just how little they showed of that and how much it affected me. Yeah. And that's, I think, is like just good filmmaking.
That makes me think about the fact that, like, when I was a kid, I remember, because like I watched horror movies from a pretty young age, but like watching horror trailers always scared me when I went to the movie theater, because my brain always filled in that like Saw 5 must be the scariest movie ever. And
right.
Because like the trailer shots just have these implications that it's like the most horrifying possible thing, and then later when I finally actually watched all the Saw movies, I was like, oh, these are not scary at all.
yeah, they're not.
They're fun.
It's gross.
Yeah, but especially when you're a kid, you're like, oh, whoa, what? Oh my god.
That's all added by like the one kid at lunch that his parents just let him watch anything, and he's like, it's the scariest thing. There's a guy that gets run over by a saw blade. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you have all these pictures in your head, and then you watch it. It just doesn't come off like that.
And not to, I do advocate for, I don't always love when I don't get to see a kill or something of that nature in like, in horror, but there's something to be said about the opposite, where if you can effectively still create that sort of sensation without even showing anything, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. Which is, weirdly enough, this is just a weird tie-in. I mentioned Trick or Treat because it has a Douglas Pipe score, and I was just reading some trivia factoids about that the other day, and apparently not a single kill in that movie is shown on screen, which is not something I ever thought about.
Oh yeah. Huh.
But it's still great, like you're shown things. But yeah, I don't know. That was just interesting. I was like, oh wow, I never even thought about it. Because typically, I feel like I would have been like, oh, that's lame. Let me see what happens. But it's presented in such a way that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I feel like Monster House is something that got in on the ground floor of 80s nostalgia, which is something we've been plagued with for the past at this point it's been like they started it early. They started earlier than the 30-year cycle, and they're at the 2000s and we're still fucking clinging on to that shit. But that's a movie that uses 80s influences but doesn't overdo it, and it just kind of has that that Amblin kind of feel to it, and I think that's an Amblin movie. Because,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, but I mean, that just because Steven Spielberg produced it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be like that. But
yeah, I mean, he produced the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Oh God. It's just this wonderful confluence of all these different elements from all these different creatives. Do you know who wrote this movie, Dylan?
No.
Dan Harmon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense if you
if you think about it. Yeah. And you know, I like early Rick and Morty stuff, not so much now, but I was just like, oh wow, it's legitimately really
Community's good.
Yeah, Community's good.
It's legitimately a really funny movie, and it's just great from top to bottom. I was pleasantly I remember liking it a lot, and I remember it having that effect on me, but I was just very pleasantly surprised to be like, oh, this is just a really good movie.
That's a movie that add that to the list of Warner Brothers movies that aren't on Blu-ray and need to be put on Blu-ray.
Is it not on Blu-ray?
I have the DVD because it's not on Blu-ray.
Dang.
Jeez.
I have it from I got that for like Christmas, so it was like fresh on DVD. So it has like a gimmicky slip cover with like a spinning wheel where the mouth on the house is open and then it's closed.
Great.
It's great.
The design of the house is awesome too.
Yes,
it's so well like thought out. It's really great, really good stuff. Perfect child horror, get you into it.
My film pick for the week is John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars, which I picked up because it was on sale at Amazon. It's the movie that made John Carpenter leave Hollywood for a very long time before he came back to do the Ward, and it's pretty obvious why. Because when you think Carpenter, you think like slow, procedural, like order of shots and how it's edited, and shots will linger. And we've talked about that on the last bonus episode, but there's just shots where someone will just be walking across a room, usually toward the camera, and instead of just seeing the whole action of them walking, there's like 3 to 5 cuts with cross dissolves on the same shot.
Oh.
It's the editing is just like an absolute hack job, and I feel like there's a reason he left the studio system after that, because they fucked with it a lot. But at the same time, the stuff coming from him isn't that great either. And it's just kind of like a mishmash of his previous movies, primarily Assault on Precinct 13. But it was supposed to, you know how there was theoretically going to be a Escape from New York sequel set in space, right?
Yes. Escape from Planet Earth, or whatever it was called.
Yeah. Well, that's Ghosts of Mars. It's supposed to. It was supposed to have Snake Plissken in it, but Columbia wouldn't let them use Snake Plissken because Escape from L.A. did so poorly. So it just got turned into just being a new character played by Ice Cube.
You know, he could have just gone ahead and made the second Escape from New York movie, the space one, and not just remade the first one in L.A.
What's the vague, just premise? I don't know anything about it.
It's hard to wrap your head around because there's a certain level of John Carpenter, like he admits, like, I don't know how much of it is just covering his own ass, but he's like, yeah, I was kind of trying to lean into like schlockiness and being kind of dumb, but the extra factors that make a movie like that wasn't important, just to have an engaging action movie and the rest can be dumb, is what he said in interviews. But I don't know about that. But it's a girl is recounting the story of how she was on like an elite team that went. I don't know why they went to this place. I forget. I think they were just checking out like this ghost town to see if anyone was there, and then they uncover a like ancient death cult on Mars, and they're all like cannibals, like that kind of, you know, like inbred monster race of people on Mars. And that's the premise, and then it just comes down basically to the demon people like sieging them. They're at a prison, which is where they find Ice Cube and a bunch of people. It's the plot isn't really, I can't describe it super well, but there's a certain point where there is, because the whole thing is told with the bookend that it's a flashback, and she's explaining it to like some court marshals, because they're like, why did everyone die? Why are you're the only survivor?
Oh, okay.
So with that in mind, there is a point where there is a flashback inside of a flashback inside of a flashback.
Oh, I did not expect that third layer.
Yeah, 3 whole layers. It's absurd, but I mean, it's not. I wouldn't even say it's the worst John Carpenter movie I've seen. It's just really, it's strange. It's worth a watch just because it's weird. The score is actually done by John Carpenter, Anthrax, Steve Vai, and Buckethead. So it's like this who's who of like studio guitarists and Anthrax.
Steve Vai? Wow.
Yeah, and they just came into the studio, and there's a behind-the-scenes feature on the Blu-ray showing them doing it, and it just seems that they were just kind of improvising the whole thing, and it just keeps cutting back to John Carpenter in the producer's chair going like, yep, that's awesome, yep.
That's funny, because I know Steve Vai from the 1980s Ralph Macchio movie Crossroads, which is a like Devil Came Down to Georgia song as a movie.
Okay.
And Steve Vai is the devil playing the guitar at the end. It's pretty fun in like a 80s forgotten B thing way, but it's pretty good. It's from the director of The Warriors and 48 Hours and stuff, Walter Hill.
Oh, okay. But the other thing I wanted to note about Ghost of Mars before we move on, there's on the IMDb trivia, there was something referencing an interview that Ice Cube did like years later, and in the interview he was like, "Yeah, Jar Carpenter let us down, man. The effects in that movie looked real bad," and that just made me so mad.
It doesn't do that, man. That's not what he's in charge of.
That's not what the director does. And first of all, and second of all, there's not really that many like digital effects in that movie, because I read that before I started watching, and I was keeping an eye out, and it's mostly just pretty well done like practical effects that done by Greg Nicotero. So, so that pissed me off on a lot of levels. Yeah.
Oh no, that's cool. I mean, that guy's pretty fucking dope. So just to throw a little more language in this podcast.
Yeah, but that pissed me off. But whatever. He's not good in that movie too, and I think that's what really set me off. It's like you didn't do anything. Especially now knowing that he was it was originally going to be Kurt Russell. It's like, come on, man. Yeah. He's become a lot better of an actor more recently, I'll say. Ice Cube. He's found his thing to stick to at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's really good in the 21 and 22 Jump Street.
And he's great in Are We There Yet?